You just ran over 500 miles?
I did.
Why?
I was the son of a bear hunter who spent a lot of time running around the mountains. I like it. I like the freedom of it. I like roaming. I like the self-sufficiency. So like on this run, it was fully self-supported. Like I carried everything on my back.
I'm thinking this is kind of scary.
Heard a bear one time at night. Like at that point, what are you going to do?
How many miles each day?
Between 26 and 77 miles per day. And after that, we had Mosquito Hill. They're giant super mosquitoes. The swarms are huge. I covered every bit of skin, and they still were hitting me through my clothes, like through multiple layers of clothing. You can be running at full speed, and they're still on you.
These sound like biblical tests.
So it's 15 miles of ash, sand, and rock without water, without a living thing, and the ash gets in your mouth and your ass crack, your fingers, your toes, your eyelids. All of that was the first few days.
What's some things that are happening that people wouldn't expect after something like this?
It definitely was more of a rebound effect than I was expecting.
So I was asking about maybe some performance enhancement during the run.
In the past, I've done mushrooms. When I really push the mileage, I start to kind of feel like I'm running with one foot in this world and one foot in another world. A lot of the ideas and people that, I've lost or known that aren't here, they feel closer. I brought some with me on this one, but for whatever reason, I kind of felt like I was already there, but I didn't really feel very inclined to lessen my grip on reality any more than it already was.
What do you think, Nsima, about Andrew just always being constantly late? Should we have a conversation with him? It's not looking good, right?
It used to be me. I don't know. He had a kid and responsibilities.
All this jiu-jitsu.
I think he just thinks he can beat all of us up now, so he doesn't actually have
at the same time.
Make my own rules.
He's like, you guys fuck with me, I'll just choke you. So don't talk to me.
It makes sense. I think that's why a lot of the best jiu-jitsu guys are so nice. They just know they can snap your neck in 2 seconds.
I wouldn't know. I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
We were having a conversation, though, about how grapplers are... You want to tell that story? Grapplers are a little bit too
Basically,
comfortable.
Nsima was like, grapplers can't fight at all. They no. No. We were talking about how it's like grapplers can definitely fight, but the distinction is that a lot of people would assume that if you're a jiu-jitsu guy, you would be more comfortable in a real fight because you know jiu-jitsu techniques. However, most of those aren't, outside of like a guillotine or a rear naked choke, most of those aren't going to convert well to street fights. You don't want to pull guard and enter into a leg lock or...
What happened in your situation, though?
So the first time, actually, true story, long before I ever trained any jiu-jitsu at all, I'd wrestled, but I was in a fight in a past life, and a guy essentially pulled guard, and I didn't know, not to just enter straight in the guard, so I just, basically jumped on him, and he locked his legs around me and closed guard around my waist and tried to isolate one of my arms to armbar me. But I didn't know jiu-jitsu, but I knew it wasn't good to let him do what he was trying to do with one of my limbs. So I just kind of anchored the elbow on my hip and then just started hammer fisting him. And I hit him 3 or 4 times and he just went out cold. His head was just bouncing off the asphalt.
Why is that so funny to me?
Nani? Yeah. It was just it happened so quickly too that it wasn't even, there was no actual threat to it.
Yeah.
And, but my point being that while the techniques themselves may not be as applicable as a lot of us who train jiu-jitsu like to believe, you spend thousands of hours controlling another resisting human body. That gives you superpowers when it comes to a human conflict. Just the ability, you're familiar with the resistance, the speed, the angles, the anatomy of the body. And so it's for me or Nsima, or even now or soon Andrew, if you gave us our clone, a clone exactly the same me or any of us that hadn't trained jiu-jitsu, it would be comical. We would control them with comical ease, And it's something a lot of people don't want to realize. However, asterisk, the thing is that 95% of guys who do jiu-jitsu, even at the high level, competitive level, can't wrestle for shit, and they don't have judo games, so they can't actually put someone on the ground where those skills are dangerous. And that's a problem in the real world, unless it's just some drunk asshole who lets himself be bowled over or jumps on you or something.
Right. And a jiu-jitsu person can be crazy and can be aggressive, but a lot of times those guys are disciplined.
Yeah.
And so somebody who's crazy in a fight is a little, it could be more difficult. It could pose some situation that you're had no idea the guy was going to run at you that way or throw some weird flying knee.
Well, how about something as simple as you get me in a good arm lock of some sort and I just don't tap?
Right.
Okay. You
break your arm and you don't care.
Yeah. And
get sued.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But having said that, like for the average person, yeah, jiu-jitsu is going to make you vastly more able to, handle yourself in a real world confrontation. The problem is a lot of guys, particularly the ones that compete a lot, get it twisted and they forget like, oh, hey, I can't actually strike or wrestle, so I'm going to go run my mouth, and then or I'm going to go transition to MMA, and this isn't going to go well. And traditionally, jiu-jitsu guys don't do well in MMA, not in the modern generation. It's wrestlers and a few, like look at the active champions right now. Not one of them has a jiu-jitsu background. You have Damian Maia, you have some guys who, transitioned from competition jiu-jitsu to MMA and did very well, but it's pretty rare. Charles Oliveira has very good jiu-jitsu, but it's not his prime background, You
just ran over 500 miles?
I did.
Why? What happened?
So as you guys know, my dad passed away unexpectedly during the winter back in December, and he was a bear hunter and a mountain man. And so, long story short, most of my best memories with him were in the mountains. And I have a propensity to kind of do some longer range ultramarathon stuff anyway. And I was looking for a way to kind of say goodbye to him and what was essentially his funeral, since he had always said he didn't want one. He never had one. So I kind of needed my way to say goodbye and process that. And so running 500 miles, so running across the entire state of Oregon on 8 weeks' notice ended up seeming pretty appealing, contrary to, initial appearances maybe.
Did you hear about this from somebody else? Did you hear about some person, or I know you're like into history of like running and conditioning and strength. Is some fable you heard about somebody running a distance and you were like, I want to try that, or how'd it come about?
No, because of the way I study history and, all the stuff I do, I was aware it was possible, whereas like someone else might not look at like a 500-mile run and think it's possible. But no, the truth is I've always just wanted to, like, what's drawn me to running wasn't speed. It wasn't a background. Like I have no track and field background. To this day, I have no formal training in running. It was just, I was the son of a bear hunter who spent a lot of time running around the mountains, and I like it. I like the freedom of it. I like roaming. I like the self-sufficiency. And so like on this run, it was fully self-supported. Like I carried everything on my back, all my food. I collected and purified my own water with a little UV light device. And I had supply boxes mailed to myself at different points along the way, different like cabins or out-of-season snow parks, or just like small town post offices. And then I'd collect my box, refill my supplies, and keep going on to the next. But
were you scared?
Not.
Or did you get scared at all? I'm thinking this is kind of scary. Like for myself, I'm kind of running myself through it and thinking like, once I got like 50 miles from home, I'd be kind of scared.
So, you're running it through your head. There's bears, and like I saw bear droppings and, stuff a few times, and heard a bear one time at night. But like at that point, there's like, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do, like it's
be more scared.
Yeah, it's going to shake out. It's going to shake out, or it's not.
Did you bring anything just in case things got hairy?
Like, I'm a convicted felon, so I never carry a weapon of any sort.
Gotcha.
But I know.
Having said that, he's convicted felon.
Well, having said that, so don't fucking believe anything I say. But no, I figured the jiu-jitsu would be enough to deal with a bear. I competed a little bit, so I got some slick subs.
I believe in you.
Yeah,
you get a bear and X guard. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
What if the bear like paused for a second and got his gi on?
Yeah,
I'd be like, oh shit.
Oh, he's fucked then, bro. My no gi game's sick, but the gi is still a strong point.
All right.
But no, it's yeah. So I was mostly scared. Might not be the right word realistically, but I was like concerned. I didn't want to. Like there'd be times where I'd look at my map and be like, all right, I'm 58 miles from the nearest small town. This would be a really shitty place to break my ankle. You know what I mean? Something like that. Or just get like half killed by a bear, but not full killed, and just have like a revenant situation. So like, yeah, the wilderness ultramarathons definitely have a different component in that regard. However, like debatably one of the hardest things was just like basic small tasks that you had to do at the end of every day. You run 50 or however many miles in a day. It's dark. you're cold, your hands are shaking, you don't have enough water, you don't have enough food, and so you have to stop, find a decent place to make camp, or you're not going to get crushed by a widowmaker, or what they call a dead tree that could fall in the middle of the night, or likely to be like camped right on like a bear game trail, or something like that.
These are all things that you kind of know just from
being a
your
bear hunter
previous
helps.
history.
Yeah, being a bear hunter helps. So like also, there were like one night when I was like, it's like a really good place to make camp. Like it's it's going to be we're only an hour or so after dusk. There's water nearby. It's like I even have one bar of cell reception, and so I start looking for a place to camp, and then I look up and I see like a bear rubbing, which is like a tree that a bear's rubbed himself on. It's like oily and little like micro hairs and stuff in there, and then some scratch marks, and where he just cracked.
Great place to scratch your back.
Oh yeah.
Well, he just cracked, and then also I went down a little further and saw a log. It's like a fallen log, and it was a little soft, but he just effortlessly cracked it open, and I was like, "Yep, not gonna sleep here." Whereas if I hadn't been a bear hunter and hadn't been queued up to look for bear sign, I probably wouldn't have seen that.
Questione: how many miles each day?
It ranged pretty widely. So I went in with a very naive idea that I would get a relatively clean, like 50 miles a day, about 10 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, it's not super practical because there's no saying there's going to be like a decent place to camp or water source or, anything every 50 miles. Like sometimes camping every 50 miles would be like, all right, well, in the last 4 hours of today and the first 4 hours of tomorrow, I'm going without water because there's no water source here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's strategy to it. Like you'd get to a point you're like, all right, I'm only 43 miles in for the day, but this is a beautiful campsite with a bunch of water. Do I want to take that, be able to drink my fill and hydrate and get a good night's sleep and then make up those extra miles tomorrow? Or do I want to push through like you have to make those decisions and you're doing it fatigued and undernourished and dehydrated. Mm-hmm. But having said that, my overall mileage ranged between 26 and 77 miles per day.
Yeah.
My first 3 days back to back, I failed to hit my mileage every day. I had, it was the first time in a long time where I actually felt physically pushed to my limit and actually had to like start questioning, my ideas of myself. Because generally, I'm always confident, but generally I'm pretty much assured of the outcome when I'm doing something. Like even if the outcome is not sure, I'm pretty good at occupying that space. Like, oh, this is going to happen one way or the other.
And this isn't something you've seen somebody plan before, though. Like, this is something you're the first person to do something like this.
Oh, I'm sure. People have run a long ways, but yeah, there was no cue, no blueprint, and anything. I just wanted to run, 500 miles seemed tidy. I like Oregon and that section of the Pacific Crest Trail, which is where I ran most, but not all of my miles, was just beautiful. So I thought, why not? And, but the first 3 days I failed to hit my mileage and I had to kind of really like talk with myself. And I was really like a lot of it in retrospect was the elevation messing, not just with my cardio output, with my thoughts, my brain, my confidence, because it has like a weird effect on you. And I jumped up like this. I did this event at between 6,000 and 8,000 feet above the elevation where I live, trained, where I was born, and I had no adaptation period. So I just literally jumped up 6,000 to 8,000 feet in elevation and then started a 500-mile run. So the first 3 days were brutal. And I carried extra water because despite all the rain we had last year, a lot of the water sources were considered unreliable. So that was like an extra 6 to 8 pounds, and that was brutal also. So between that and the fact that there were a bunch of fallen trees blocking the trail, some of them were like several feet tall that had to be either climbed over or ducked under or moved, ran around with that extra weight, the elevation, and then also the fact that the incline, I knew I knew through the course of the run I'd be climbing Everest twice more than actually in terms of elevation gain, but I failed to account for how much of that would be front-loaded on the route, and I'd just be jumping straight into steep, rocky ground. And so,
what do you mean? Like most of the elevation gain was at the beginning of the run?
Yeah, like I would say most of it. A lot of it was just like immediately smacked right in the mouth before I had a chance to adapt to the 6,000 to 8,000 foot increase in elevation, or the extra weight that the water, that I hadn't trained with. And my normal pack was like 30, 31 pounds. With the extra weight, it was closer to 40, which is just really heavy for impact running over hard ground and broken ground. So the first 3 days were beyond brutal. But, and then of course, in the early days, we had Devil's Peak, which is, it's about 8,000 feet or almost 8,000 feet, like pretty much straight up, super rocky, so high up that there was still snow in July, like mid-July. And even like on the downslope on the backside, I had to actually navigate like snow and ice that had melted and refroze, just not slip. Yeah, and I was all like geared up for the heat and everything. And then after that, we had Mosquito Hill, which is about 50 to 60 miles of, quite frankly, the hardest part of the whole trail was Mosquito Hill, and it breaks a lot of hikers and people that just try to pass through, or work crews who go there to try to like log lumber, because I don't even know how to describe it. They're giant super mosquitoes. The swarms are huge. There's like literally nothing alive in their territory. Like it's just dead wood, and they just live in all these dead trees, and there's like no animals, nothing goes there because they just eat through everything. And so it's like I covered my skin with DEET, like hardcore DEET. I treated my clothes, my gear, my tent, everything with perimethrin, which is like a heavy duty like material, bug repellent. I wore a mosquito net that was infused with bug repellent. I covered every bit of skin, and they still were hitting me through my through multiple layers of clothing. They were collecting on my net and just gathering on the moisture. They were swarming in my tent. I ran and just dove into my tent as soon as it was set up, as quick as I could, zipped it back up, and there were 11 mosquitoes that made it in with me in literally 1 second. And I had to hunt them each down before I could like start doing my nightly stuff. And then hundreds of them collected on the outside. And so it was like, I mean, on the bright side, you don't want to stop, like collect water, do like rest, piss, like you don't want to do any, like you will go to your bladder burst and you have no water left because they are just on you. And then the worst part's they're on you even when you're moving at full speed. You can be running at full speed and they're still on you. So Mosquito Hill was brutal. And on
these
top
are like
of,
these sound like biblical tests. You know, like when God sent locusts. You know what I mean? This
felt
is
like it.
Geez, it seems like every day was a new test for you almost.
Yeah.
Power Project family, we talk about beef and meat all the time on the podcast. That's why we've partnered with Certified Piedmontese Beef. But did you know this? That 85% of all grass-fed, grass-finished beef in the United States is imported from other countries? 85%.
Damn.
But Certified Piedmontese is made in the U.S. of A.
America.
Fuck yeah. So go out and get some of the best tasting, some of the leanest, some of the best beef from Piedmontese. Andrew, how can they get it?
Absolutely. So you guys can head over to cpbeef.com and at checkout enter promo code POWER to save 25% off your entire order. And if your order is $150 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. Again, cpbeef.com. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Fuck yeah.
And then there was the Oregon Desert right after that, which is a kind of a dark joke 'cause it's not a desert at all. It is a place where a giant fire some years ago just torched everything down to bedrock. So you're running, I think it was a dozen or more. It was about 15 miles from me because I detoured to a water source that ended up being dry and had to work my way back to the trail and go from there. But
That's some shit.
so it was 15 miles of ash, sand, and rock without water, without a living thing. You're just constantly losing the trail because there's nothing to trail through. And it's steep, it's sandy, the ground's like soft, so you're constantly rolling your ankle and slipping, and the ash gets in your mouth and your ass crack, your fingers, your toes, your eyelids. And so that was like all of that was the first few days.
Dude, can I ask you, like, how, like, did anybody have your location? Because there's some of these places where it doesn't seem like there's going to be reception.
Yeah, so we scheduled check-ins, just like when I hunt. And it's like, if you don't hear from me on this day, then you know I'm between this point and this point. And it's not like, oh, where is he? You know what I mean? And I'm not an idiot, so I'm not going to leave the trail or that zone because I know. But yeah, when I was on support, like, you know, most likely if something happened outside of being able to, you know, emergency helicopter or something, I was going to have to crawl out, you know.
Gotcha.
So I was trying not to avoid that.
How many days did you do this 500 miles in? And what was the time?
It was about a little over 10 days, but I actually would have finished a little earlier, but I outpaced my pickup. And so it was like, I think 20 miles or so from the end. And it was actually when I posted that picture of my foot, because at some point that day the tape had slipped off, and I realized my toe hurt, but I hadn't quite realized that, you know, it got worse after that. The whole toe got infected and swole up. It was just like red and puffy.
What kind of shoes are you wearing during this, and what kind of socks?
The Ultra Olympus 5, which was held up amazingly. It only took me 2 pairs to do all 500 miles. And I always wear merino wool socks, and I used smart wool ones for this.
And do you have to like wash and dry the stuff, or you just air it out, or like because
Yeah, you constantly-
how many
constantly.
socks are you going to bring? You know?
So 2 pairs, and then when you're wearing one, you wash, you rinse the other and hang them from your pack on the outside so they dry. And merino wool dries really quickly. But I
What's the brand on there so people
Smart Wool.
Okay.
Smart.
I've tried several, but the Smart Wool are my favorite. And I actually use here's a little hack for you. If you're running really long distance, instead of using the Smart Wool running sock, use their light hiking sock. Has just a little bit extra padding and a little bit extra protection to it for like a longer run.
You have a lot of experience with hiking, and I know you didn't do it on this run, but what kind of hiking boots would you recommend? Because I think there's a lot of people that love that, but sometimes they go out and wreck their feet with not great shoes.
So the best hiking boot I have ever worn is the Vivo Barefoot hiking boot. It's not either the Hunter or the Tracker. I've tried them both.
Tracker Decon?
It might be. It's the one with I like the one with the stitched sole. Whichever one has the stitched sole, not the glued sole, just because I like that extra connection.
Yeah.
For light, like for summer, like a 3-season boot, that's what I wear myself. For heavier stuff like snow, I tend to go, like it's really hard to go wrong with Danner. Danner is a good brand, and they've been around for a long time. That's what my dad and the old bear hunters they all wore Danner stuff. So I have, I think, 2 or 3 pairs of Danner boots and then some Vivos.
Is it these ones?
Is that, yes. The ones I have are brown. But yeah, right there.
This one?
That one right there. So Tracker.
Oh, I have these ones also.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're comfy.
Yeah,
Nice and wide.
it's the best balance between support, natural foot shape, and just being light. I grew up wearing a lot of moccasins and stuff which is my first introduction to barefoot shoes.
Moccasins?
Moccasins, yeah. And dude, moccasins are dope. Like I'm actually looking for a new pair right now. But to me, and that was in the old days, mountain men, when they came west and started living by themselves and alongside Indians, they ditched the boots and all went to moccasins. They would just wear gaiters made of beaver skin because it was water repellent and warm. But moccasin, the barefoot shoe, it's been around for a lot longer than, you know what I mean, most of us realize.
What are moccasins made of again?
Usually deer skin or leather, but it's just literally like a single layer of leather, and then on the bottom they'll do like a layer of rawhide as reinforcement to a little more thickness for the sole, or maybe 2 layers, but and then stitched beads, whatever you like. They make them high, they make them low, slip-ons, tight, Moccasins are dope.
I think that's what David Weck was wearing when he came here a while back.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
He was going old school.
I mean, it's hard, like I said, nothing new under the sun.
What about chafing? How do you battle chafing?
Actually, Zach Bitter was the one who helped me with that. He told me just CBD cream and preemptively put it. But my feet, I'm pretty resistant to most of the things that ail most runners: the fatigue, the dehydration, and even the blisters. Believe it or not, despite what you might believe from seeing that toe. But I preemptively tape my what they call hot spots, or areas where you start running long enough, you start to realize hey, I get a blister in this spot, this spot, and this spot. So instead of waiting for that, just put a layer of tape on it. They got blister tape that's super cheap, or moleskin. They also have I don't use it as much, but some people like the liquid bandage stuff.
What would you suggest for between the thighs? For me, my thighs they love that
coconut
shit.
oil based CBD cream, like a coconut and beeswax based CBD, and put it on there before you run.
And that'll stay. You don't think I should tape anything? That I should just put CBD?
If that taping would be the next step, but if you can avoid it, if you can just get or even just Vaseline. But I like the CBD for a number of reasons. It's antiseptic.
There's
it's
a product.
anti-inflammatory.
There's a product called Chub Rub that you can check out. That's on Amazon. It's actually just like big stickers. It's a little bit like hostage tape.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Tape like your crotch, basically. I've actually used tallow with a lot of success as well. That's what I used for the marathon.
That's smart.
And I just called it butt cream, but using some tallow really worked really well. And I had to get, just because you're running really far, I had to get my butt cheeks and my cracks.
Oh yeah.
I'm way up in there. Yeah.
You do have deep cheeks.
Oh yeah, you got to get in there.
Oh no, I was all up in
get deep in there.
Yeah, no, you got to get the grundle. You got to get anything there's contact. You got to get. But no, I just do. They also have some specific anti-chafe rubs for runners that you might like, but those are basically just beeswax based with essential oils, I think. But yeah, if you coat that area up, you should be good. And taping is last resort. It's like in you guys see The Office when he goes running. The guy goes running and he tapes cotton balls over his nipples, and they come off. Everyone's like, "What are you doing?" And they come off at some point, and he's just by the end, they're just bleed. There's just bloody spots on his shirt.
This shit's amazing.
With with chafing, you can also just wear, like, if you wear long enough, like spandex, then you won't have that problem.
I know, but I don't like that.
I know, because you don't get to show off. You don't get to show off the legs, right?
Show them gams, bro.
No, I'm a short guy.
Yeah.
Short shorts.
But it does work. It's really effective. Sometimes you got to pick what's going to be effective.
Yeah, I got to do that. But hey, you were mentioning like
Yep, exactly. That's so good.
your recovery like has been something that I've never heard somebody talk about, like post run, the things that you've been dealing with. What's some things that are happening that people wouldn't expect after something like this?
So I guess I haven't really talked about this. I mean, you and I talk about it, but basically my body, like my muscles, my joints, all that held up incredibly well to the pound. You know what I mean? I definitely had some, like, I think there were 8 like small injuries altogether, but nothing really lingering. However, I underestimated the impact on just my nervous system in general. And so it's like, what are we, month? It was like, so I finished about a month ago, and I'm still like only back to like 85% and like my grip strength, my explosive outputs on like the assault bike or sprints, like, excuse me, my body's just like it's taking longer to get back to, it's like almost like you're sick or just really drained, and I've been lingering here, and it's like each week's a little better than the last, but it definitely was more of a rebound effect than I was expecting, because I'd kind of just been like, oh, if it takes me 3 days to recover from 150 miles, and 500 shouldn't be too much, but a week or two I'll be good, and it ended up being a little more drainy on the battery.
You even said that your body wanted to sleep way more.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
What happened?
About double the volume. So it's like I normally naturally need about 6 hours a night. I've trained myself over the last year or so to get up to about 7, but it's like I was sleeping 8 hours in a night and plus a 3 or 4 hour nap in the day, and then still just like doing very, very light work, calisthenics, and slowly working my way back in, and not really working or doing too much, like I was before at least. And I was still just drained, man, and sleeping way more.
What about like cravings for food and stuff like that? Was that a little different? Your diet get a little different?
Not really. So that was the other main, other than the fatigue, the main lingering effect I had after the fact was stomach issues. And it was like, it's still been bothering me a little bit, but it's basically, I think it was just the volume of food I needed day by day. The fact that I was never sitting still to digest it. I'm always digesting on the move, and everything I'm eating is freeze dried, And towards the end, I actually seemed to kind of get used to it. And it was just in time to come back here and have all this fiber and like wet, hydrated food. And then, of course, the junk food binge, from the Washington border all the way back down. It's like we're hitting seafood.
Kind of celebrating and stuff.
Yeah, and I don't eat gluten, and I'm, eating like, baked goods from like, just like, so there's some of that for sure. But my gut is, recovering now. So just eating a lot of like fruit and meat and eggs, and kind of keeping it simple, getting a lot of the probiotic stuff in there, and
Yeah, I've heard that for runners, especially like long distance and going the crazy distances you're going, you can end up with almost like a little bit of leaky gut. It makes it a little harder to digest things and stuff like that.
I didn't have too much of that. So actually, I was fortunate to. I worked with, or I'm buddies with, pretty much the best nutritionist on planet Earth. And so he handled all of my nutrition stuff for me. His shout out to Jordan Sullivan, but he does nutrition for most of the UFC, a lot of the UFC champions, Israel Adesanya, Alexander Volkanovski, and Leon Edwards. A lot of those guys. So specifically, that makes him not only an expert in nutrition, but also hydration, dehydration, and rehydration because of the weight cutting involved in elite mixed martial arts. And frankly, he blew my mind. I'm a fairly well-educated guy when it comes to nutrition and hydration, but he blew my mind. He was like, he taught me that like different type muscle, like, slow twitch and fast twitch muscle fibers hold different amounts of fluid. They hydrate and rehydrate differently. Every single person has like an electrolyte profile that's unique, like a fingerprint. And some people, need to replace different things at different rates, which, that seems pretty simple and makes sense. But then you start realizing that different people also have different absorption rates. And so it's like, you might be an amazing technical runner and an amazing athlete, but the most your water, the most fluid your stomach can absorb is 2 liters per hour, and you're a person sweating 2.5 or 3 per hour. Just a matter of time till someone like me beats you, because we might not be as good, but we're just more resilient. And so with like the tests he did on me.
What kind of tests were they, by the way?
Hydration stuff. So it's like the most basic would be weighing yourself before a run and after a run, and tracking all the fluid and food intake during, electrolyte intake. and seeing fluid loss rates and depletion rates and rehydration rates. And then also I haven't done the DEXA scan yet, my bad, but I did the rest of the stuff. So it's like, blood work and testosterone and hormones and all that. And so basically like the overall picture they got was, for whatever reason, my body seems to be more resilient to the detrimental effects of ultra endurance activity than the average person, even at like the elite ultra running level. Number of theories, most likely partially genetic, and then the other part being that I lived large portions of my life like in what would we say, deficits of sorts, either not eating or not drinking enough fluid or taking care of myself, just as a drug addict, as an inmate, and through a lot of this I had pretty decent physical output, and so he thinks that your body can to a certain extent adapt to a lot of these resiliences, and then having higher testosterone, and additionally it seems like my testosterone doesn't crash post race to the same extent that most people do. Like, so I naturally sit like a little below 800, and then. But yeah, I mean, hey, 36 years old, lifelong drug addict, a lot of concussion, pretty much every low T. Yeah, pretty much every low T risk factor. But I'm also a guy who's, lifting heavy weight, spending time in nature. I eat, real
Your
food.
lifestyle is like a high testosterone lifestyle.
Basically, I eat liver all the time, and it just makes me super shredded year round. But just don't test me.
Power Project family, if you're trying to increase your muscle mass, if you're trying to lose body fat, if you're trying to stick to your nutrition plan, if you're trying to get fit, pretty much if there's anything you're trying to do for your health, we know that sleep is the biggest determining factor to help you get from point A to point B. That's why we've been sleeping on 8 Sleep mattresses for probably more than 2 years now. And the main reason is the technology behind the Pod Pro. Now, the Pod Pro is like the Tesla of beds. It will change its temperature based off of how you're sleeping during the night. And if you have a partner that's sleeping on the other side, they could have their own temperature settings. We all sleep hot here, and I used to wake up in a puddle of my own sweat. Gross. That doesn't happen anymore because of the 8 Sleep mattress, and I've been getting the best sleep of my life. Now, if you don't want to replace your mattress, you can just get the Pod Pro cover, and you can put that over your current mattress to get all the benefits of 8 Sleep. But if you also need to replace your old nasty mattress, you can get the Pod Pro cover and the 8 Sleep mattress. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, you guys got to head over to 8sleep.com/powerproject, and you guys will automatically receive $150 off of your order. Again, 8sleep.com/powerproject. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
But you do eat liver.
I eat everything. But see, the thing is, like, I've been doing that since I was a kid, running around barefoot, eating animal. Like, there's actually a picture, I was showing my fiance recently, a picture of our meat freezer when I was a kid. And it's like, there's bear, there's rattlesnake, there's a raccoon in there. Like, it's like this is, like a lot of the stuff that I was doing that I was embarrassed about as a kid, like being the country bumpkin, going to school and, with like suburban kids. And now it's all like, it's classy to eat organs, walk barefoot, do wheelbarrows and shoveling and, manual labor and functional fitness. But, but so, but yeah, so I definitely had like a unique imprinting phase, and that, early on my body and mind were exposed to difficult things. And so long story short, resiliency seems to make up for the fact that I'm not a very fast or technical runner.
How did you stumble upon all these interesting like fables, facts, tales about strength?
When I was locked up, mostly, like you hear, like urban legends mostly in there. Most of them aren't true,
This guy used to bench 550 that used to be in here or whatever.
Well,
right?
yeah, and he did it because he only did push-ups in here, and you know what I mean? And then he went out and, he was out for a week before he went back to San Quentin, and in that time, he pushed 550 like 6 times, you know what I mean? Right. And, but at the same time, like you hear about a lot of Bruce Lee stuff in there, and a lot, like a lot of the mental training, and a lot of like Henry, that was where I learned about Henry Rollins. And so I was just interested in it. And then I've also just been fascinated with like living as close to I could as like the classics, the Spartans, the, the Vikings, the ancient martial artists. Like, as a kid, I always thought the monk martial artist on the mountain, like that lifestyle of purity.
In a
and
horse
focus.
stance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
At sunrise and sunset, hasn't moved at all. Yeah. I always thought that stuff was cool. And like, I think a lot of guys they misinterpret it. Like they think like imparting like a Viking mindset on your life today means like buying a battle axe and getting a bunch of like Viking face tattoos and, but that's like an external expression. I like to think more along like internal lines. Like I think every man could benefit from reading Musashi's 21 Laws or 21 Rules for Life. And it's like you go down it and it's just basic, human wisdoms that like treat other people well.
Is
like
that the Book of Five Rings or is that something
Book of
else?
Five Rings,
Yep, I've read that.
And it's like, and then like he also has little witticisms that I like. Like, it is good to be able to say something well. It is better to say it in fewer words. And like, I think like chuckles aside, like that's a great thing to think about, And so I try to like look at those things and use them as like more of an internal compass. But I also just geek out on the history stuff, And so some of it's like our recent post on Apache breathwork.
Dude, can we pull that up? Mm-hmm. That shit was dope.
It's simple. It's just like I heard about this growing up, and I was speaking with a buddy of mine, Daniele Bolelli. He's an Italian historian.
That's amazing name.
For anyone who likes history, check out his episodes on Rogan. They're just amazing.
Not that one.
But we were talking about this and he was the one that reminded me of it. But yeah, just filling your mouth up with water and running. And it's same as like the mouth tape or whatever, but they would take it to another level because they would do like long runs, hill sprints. They would do what they called stalking games, which is like essentially long range tag in the mountains for runners, stuff like that. And then they could outrun a cavalry horse. And it's like, you hear that and people get super triggered, like, no one can outrun a horse. First of all, yeah, they can. I actually plan on racing a horse at some point as soon as I can set that up. But there's races throughout history where men and horses were able to enter, and after a certain point, men win because we are the best endurance and land animal on the planet. Mm-hmm. We're bipedal. We only got to move 2 legs, not 4. We have sweat glands, so technically horses do too. But we're not covered in fur. They're very, very fragile creatures in terms of what they need and food and water and out. You know what I mean? And so it's like, no, it's not. And you add in heat and the Arizona, New Mexico mountains and canyons and. So anyway, my point being, run with water in your mouth.
Let's check this out. Like, you do a lot of really cool videos like this.
You want audio on this one?
Yeah.
Go for it, yeah.
Why not?
Among the Apache, running is a sign of warriorship, and Apache warriors could cover over 70 miles per day on foot through rugged deserts and mountains with limited water, more than what a pursuing cavalry horse could cover, all without leaving a trace. This began with their children, who would learn to run while holding a mouthful of water in order to promote deep, steady nasal breathing. They would practice this technique on long runs, hill sprints, and during stealthy games they called stalking runs. It was these training tactics that helped cement the Apache warrior's place as the Lord of the Desert for over 5 centuries. Follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, TikTok, and Threads for more.
Sick.
Yeah. So I love stuff like that. And then some of it, like some of the stuff on my page will be like for instance, Babe Ruth made his own Gatorade by mixing ginger ale and bourbon, and he would drink that during games. Like just sometimes just little stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But it's I've always just geeked out on, like I said, the strength history, endurance history, and martial arts history.
Yeah.
And
I posted that video of the baseball player pitching a no-hitter on LSD. I don't know if you had a chance to see that.
No, I didn't see that. That's a trip though.
But a hell of a trip, yeah.
Yeah, literally.
A no-hitter on LSD? So that means like no one managed to hit his pitches.
Right.
Just full flow state.
Is LSD okay to take? Like, is it illegal to take that shit?
No.
No?
No, I mean,
don't think so.
I don't know if it's like on banned substance lists or not.
Yeah.
Could be.
I mean, I've definitely never taken it in jiu-jitsu, so I wouldn't know. But if
You're being sarcastic, or are you serious?
I've definitely taken it.
And you utilize some of this stuff on some of the runs and stuff, right? Like, so during this like 500 mile, did you use any mushrooms or anything like that?
Yeah, traditionally I would bring. I'd like to bring a little bit.
Oh,
of
here's the clip. Sorry.
Oh yeah, let's see this.
Oh, so it was in the
this is old school
70s.
too. Back when cocaine was legal too, right?
Yeah, why not?
There were literally all things were legal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why not? Damn.
Yeah, some people like, I don't know, were like Like
Yeah.
LSD, not going to work when you're. But I mean, I'm sure this guy probably tried to use it more than once and didn't have the same result. But he also said that he thought Richard Nixon was the umpire. I thought that was pretty dope.
Yeah.
Like, Mr. President, how you doing?
Just trying to beam him over
That was
and
a
over
strike,
again.
right?
Yeah.
So I was asking about maybe some performance enhancement during the run.
So I, in the past, I've done mushrooms, like small, not micro doses, but maybe like a half gram, something like that, up to a gram, and really liked it. Just because when I run in general, it already feels like I'm like, when I really push the mileage, I start to kind of feel like I'm running with one foot in this world and one foot in another world. Like it's a strange, very liberating feeling, and it's cool in a lot of ways, but it's like a lot of the ideas and people that, I've lost or known that aren't here, they feel closer, and things just kind of, I feel a little bit outside myself in terms of objective. I can think about things without having some of the emotional responses or, things that, about stuff in my past or whatever. And so I've found it in the past pretty beneficial if later into an event, if I really wanted to kind of lean more into that, to take a small dose of mushrooms. But I brought some with me on this one. But for whatever reason, I kind of felt like I was already there. Like I got there quick. Maybe it was just how hard the first few days were. And it just threw me right into it. But I didn't really feel very inclined to lessen my grip on reality any more than it already was. However, there was one day, I had two days that were pretty rough due to dehydration. Like crossing the Oregon desert was one. And on that day, I was just dehydrated, and there was no water for miles, and I just kind of had to push it. And unfortunately, that was also a day I was running low on carbohydrates. I was due to restock, I think, at the end, like literally at the other side of the desert. So to cross the desert without much water or carbohydrates. And on that day, I took a micro dose, like a very, very small micro dose, just because it was like, well, here we are. The chips are down. This is going to work, or it's not. Like there's nothing, there's nothing on the other side of this to lose. So, and it definitely helped, but it didn't take enough to really get off my kilter, just because I had to continue making decisions along the way. And I also didn't want to fuck up my navigation across the desert of ash, it's like hell.
Andrew, see if you can bring up, there's a clip of Mike Tyson just downing like a tremendous amount of mushrooms, like on a podcast. And it was amazing because he does it with no water. Because it made me think about that, because you were saying how thirsty you were and how you were dehydrated.
Oh yeah, they're gross, dude.
Yeah, they're nasty.
The cool thing about mushrooms, I talked to you about this, using mushrooms, or let's say maybe for me, I'm 250, so maybe a half gram to a gram before jujitsu. It helps you do new shit. It makes you it pattern interrupts. Let me put it that way. Because there will be something that you're very used to doing and you do the same thing all the time. But then it's just my mind opens up to a bunch of new stuff. And I always do stuff I've never done before. And then it's it sticks. I don't know why that is, but it just works well that way.
It helps me see simple things that were right in front of me the whole time. I'd be in my guard in this position, and I'd be working to destabilize them. Oh
So
my
you play
God.
the audio.
Oh my God.
They're
bro.
freaking out.
I can't. Oh, he's gonna be chewing for a sec. Now,
Oh, he's just staring at him too.
the pussy.
Are you even gonna drink the Fiji?
But it's a fungus. It's what we made out of.
I just wonder how that hit him later on that podcast.
He's a savage, bro. I've seen him do some stuff and just completely seem unfazed by it.
Mm-hmm. If you have knee pain or lower back pain, the initial thought is that it's probably coming from the knee or the lower back. But have you ever thought that it could actually be coming from your feet? Most people wear shoes like this. They are narrow, they are not flat, they are inflexible. So it's almost like your feet are stuck in casts all day long. And if you imagine that your hand was stuck in a cast all day, well, your fingers are going to become weak, but then your elbows might start feeling a little bit wonky because your fingers don't move, and then it might travel up your shoulder. That's the same thing that happens with your feet when you put them in normal, inflexible shoes. That's why you want to throw those out and start using some Vivo Barefoot shoes. They have shoes for hiking on their website, working out in the gym. They have casual shoes like these Novices right here. But the difference with Vivo is that they have a wide toe box so that your feet, like my wide-ass feet, can spread and move within the shoe. They're flat so that your feet are doing the work when you're walking, and they are flexible so your feet have the freedom to move the way they need to move so that they can be strong feet. That's why you want to get yourself some of these. And Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at vivobarefoot.com/power project. When you guys get there, you'll see a code across the top. Make sure you enter that code at checkout for 15% off your entire order. Again, that's at vivobarefoot.com/power project. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Guys, look at this.
Ooh, look at that
I could
bend.
stick that in my mouth.
Do it.
I'm not going to do
Come
That's
on.
disgusting.
Okay.
No. Get him.
What are some of the crazier things that you've run into in studying some ancient history on strength, and what are some really wild feats that you may have seen or come across?
So, in terms of strength, this is going to trigger a bunch of people. Yes. But essentially, the strongest dude ever was this Viking in the 11th, an Icelandic guy in the 11th century, who walked 3 steps with a ship's mast on his back, weighing 1,400 pounds, and additionally, it was like 30 feet long. So he was stabilizing that. Now, that was a feat that was that like most modern strongmen tried to reproduce. Okay, Eddie Hall failed. They all failed except Thor. Thor did it. He actually took it, I think, 2 steps further.
It's in his genes.
It is. Thing is, homeboy did it 1,000 years before Juice.
Oh.
So that's you know what I mean. Like people can give me a dozen names of people who did greater things or similar things after 1980 or 1970, and it's like, okay, cool, but were you eating pickled herring and nothing else, and dark ale only as your diet back then? To be fair, this guy also broke his back and was like severely fucked up after this, but he managed it. 3 steps, 1,400, and not a yoke, an actual 30-foot mast on his back. So there's that. And you also have the origin of the marathon, which is all fucked up, but many people think it was just the guy who essentially, short version of a long story. The origin of the marathon starts with the Battle of Marathon. The Greeks, who were vastly outnumbered and they thought they were going to be defeated by the Persian Empire, managed to beat the Persians, but all of Greece was like on the brink of just collapse. Everyone was turning on everyone, cities were burning, and so they needed to let people know, hey, like, stop freaking out. We want, stop burning down your own cities and whatnot. We won the war. It's cool. But they were Athens was 25 miles from Marathon. And so this guy ran super fast, so fast that by the time he got to Athens, said, it is finished, and then died on the spot. He pushed his pace so hard he killed himself. What people don't know is that he ran like 400 miles or so before that, because he had been a messenger through the actual battle, before the battle, after the battle, all this, and he had been running constantly for days. Yeah. And then finally, this guy, having run 400 and something miles, he's like, all right, I got 25 miles left to save my country. Like, that is it. My mom, my daughters, my wife, everyone I care about, the temples of my gods, the graves of my fathers, like, it comes down to me. I got to run 25 miles as fast as I can. And he did it so fast that he died. So, like, that's amazing to me. Like, stuff like that calls to me in a way that, like, nothing else does. Like, that level of commitment and sacrifice. So those would be, like, 2 of the extremes. But a lot of it's just, like cool shit. Like, you hear about, did we ever talk about the, last time I was on about it, like, the history of the heel hook? Did we get into that? No. Oh, bro. I mean, no one knows where it actually came from, but the oldest way I've been able to trace it back was...
and for people who don't know what a heel hook is,
heel hook is a grappling submission you'll see in jiu-jitsu and sambo and catch wrestling, MMA, but basically it's a really gnarly one. And while essentially you're tucking the toes of your opponent in your armpit, scooping in a variety of ways, as Nsima knows, I like to do mine differently, scooping under the heel and lifting the heel in a way that laterally torques the knee, okay? Yeah. So anything with a knee is nasty, but this one in particular, like the way it twists, it can snap some shit that's never gonna heal right. Yeah. Like not just like your MC, but like your LCL, PCL.
It'll shred it all up.
Yeah, you'll never be the same again. So very destructive submission. It's outlawed under a lot of rule sets, which is a point of controversy. Some people agree with that, some people don't.
Is it illegal in gi and no gi?
Generally, it's
illegal in the gi in most federations.
In most federations, yeah. Some super fights will allow it in the gi, but generally in IBJJF, unless you're in adult black belt no gi, you can do it.
Is that maybe what Gordon Ryan got his ankle busted in?
No, that was a toe hold, a similar variation, but it's actually what Gordon Ryan's beat like 80% of his opponents with. and it's just like that. That
He
whole
doesn't
Danaher
twerk it
camp.
though either. Like he's nice with
Well,
it,
he's just
you know?
control. It's that whole Danaher camps that control is their byword, and I tend to agree with that approach because if you can't control someone, then what are you doing? Yeah. But so anyway, it's become really, really popular. It's been around forever, but it's become more publicly popular in the last 10 years or so. And essentially, the earliest record I could find about it was ancient Greece. There was a guy named Halter, and he was a very small guy, very unathletic, and he's a pancratist or pancration fighter, ancient mixed martial arts fighter. Thing is, back then, not only did they not have time limits, they didn't have weight classes either.
Yeah.
So if Halter is $160 and he's fighting guys that are 240, 250, you know what I mean? That's a problem, obviously. And you got punches and kicks. It's not just grappling. So basically, he went he was so dedicated to his craft and to being a successful fighter that he went and he actually consulted the Oracle and the Oracle of Delphi, and he basically said, "How do I become victorious in my fights?" And she looked at him and said, "By being trampled upon." And he's like as is usually walked away like, what the fuck? I have no idea what that means. But apparently in his next match, he is getting just smashed. Like he's on, some guy's standing on him, just smashing down on him, and he just kind of clicks in his head like, oh, I see what's here. Like, I see what's happening here. And he gets control of the leg and learns to lift the heel. And I got to imagine that guy got his knee torn apart too, because heel hooks, first of all, if you're not familiar with them, that's one thing, but they don't hurt. Like there's no pain. You feel pressure and then your whole knee's gone.
Yeah.
Like there's some submissions, you're like, ow, that hurts. That's a warning. I'm going to tap. Or some are just pure pain. Like, some of them are just compliance, But the heel hook, there's no warning, and then it's just gone. So I got to think that guy Halter tore that guy's knee apart. But essentially wins his match. And after that, realized oh my God, I can become a specialist at this. And, my size, being small and unathletic is not going to matter as much. I can get in on these guys' legs. They're confident. They're going to essentially let me under them because typical wisdom says don't put yourself under a larger opponent. And he ended up going undefeated and retiring, which was pretty rare back then, was an undefeated record. Yeah. And he was just a heel hook specialist. And,
evil.
Evil. So stuff like that's just cool. And also I like watching it, how human minds work across the ages. And actually, John Danaher and I talked about this once, what the level of expertise in ancient Greek martial arts was. And we agreed that it was probably pretty fucking high because you're talking about hundreds of years of, people prioritizing as a primary Olympic sport fighting, and wrestling, boxing.
Specifically pancration, because I heard that there's not much known about it. So what is known about it?
Basically, they have some rule sets and stuff like that. There weren't time limits. You couldn't eye gouge. You couldn't, you know what I mean? But you couldn't eye gouge and, fish hook, and that's about it, though. There's punches, kicks, there was grappling. So fights were won more often by submission than knockout, but there were knockouts. Yeah. And there were, sometimes people would submit from fatigue because with not a time limit, if you get to a point where you physically can't keep fighting, then you should have joined Wild Hunt Conditioning. But, no. But then, that's a submit. If you can't fight, you're no longer able to defend yourself, that's a submission. Yeah. So, anyway, that's... I like to, any and all of that stuff I collect.
Yeah, and with that amount of running, maybe you're trying to run your way into the history books yourself?
No. I've accidentally broke a couple world records in niche thing, weighted running and stuff like that. But I realized it really doesn't matter too much to me. It's the same reason I don't compete in ultras anymore. It's I, quite frankly, don't really care what anyone else is doing or how fast they're running. And more than that, the big appeal to me for running long distances is being alone and being able to wander and have that freedom and complete solitude. And then it's also a more unique challenge in the sense that, I don't have a follow team. I don't have these nice, tidy little, checkpoints and refueling stations and aid stations. And I don't have a masseuse or a car, a mobile food truck following me, making my meals like a lot of these distance runners do. And I don't have anyone pacing me or keeping my mind on track. So it falls to me to iron my shit out, to keep my demons in line, and not start making excuses for why I shouldn't be here or why this is dumb or why, I should just go home.
So you did over a marathon every day, right?
No, I do I'll peak at like 40 miles, like 4 times a week. And then
I just mean like in this 500-mile journey,
yeah.
you were doing, you said between 26 and 70.
77. So there, and then I think 26 day was the only day less than an ultra. So an ultra is 31 miles or more. Every day was in the 30s except that. And then the last day was 20 miles, but that was a half a day. And I was still, that 24-hour period still had more than, 30 miles in it.
First time that you ever ran like a marathon distance or just even over like 15 miles, did it take you a few days to recover from it?
Yeah, it messed me up pretty good, but I didn't have any training or like good shoes or anything. I just literally was sweatpants and broken down old Nikes, and was just like, okay, here we go, And it like actually makes me kind of cringe looking back at how unprepared and I was for that specifically. But
a really cool thing though is like compared to other people who run ultras, you're built. You know what I mean? You hold muscle. You're strong. You do grappling, right?
Yeah.
So I guess for anyone who wants to get into this, what are just the things that they need to keep in mind to just stay built? Because no one wants to be a frail ultra runner.
No.
Like that's not the want.
So my basic over me, I'm 5'11". I walk around at 180 something pounds usually. Could be 180, could be 190, usually somewhere in between. Deadlift 550. I can run 500 miles. I can put up I'm functionally strong. If you give me a kettlebell or a club or have me doing L-sit pull-ups or calisthenics or any of that. And then I have skills and, the grappling, striking, shooting, all that stuff. But what I just refer to it as full spectrum training. So it's like if the hybrid athlete is someone who trains strength and endurance, a full spectrum athlete would be someone with strength, endurance, mobility, skills training, calisthenics training, functional training. And it's like really just being the whole complete package. And that's how I train myself, because it's just essentially, I think it's best to look at a way you can train that addresses your weak points first, and eventually in time just irons them out altogether. Yeah. So it's like if I'm big and strong but I'm slow and I get winded going upstairs, what use am I really, But if I can run 500 miles but I'm a string bean who can't, it's like a punch feels like a pillow, then what use am I also, So I try to look at it like that. But as far as what people can do, it's train full spectrum. All of my personal training plans I put them up on my website and they're all over my social media. So it's like, I don't hide the way that I train or the way that I do this. I just, I give the exact blueprint that I use. I just tend to be more consistent in my application and in the small details than most people. I don't drink, I don't party, I don't, watch porn or play video games or do any of these diversions of my attention. I train, I eat, I sleep, and I spend time with my family, I don't socialize outside of training, I'm dialed in and I pay attention to little things. I do my mobility, I do my active recovery. I don't skip this or that. And those are the things that add up in time. But as far as how I do it, I give the entire world can get the blueprint for, how I train in all these different ways for 30, 40, $50. It's not guarded knowledge, but most people aren't willing to actually apply it over the long term. And so as far as the muscle, I'm not huge, but I do a little bit of I find traditional bodybuilding stuff to be very good for your joints in terms of doing full range of motion, proper stuff. If you have weak external mobility or external rotation in your shoulders, get good at pulling down all the way to a squat position, a lat pull down behind your back. If you have something going on with your trap or, weak shoulders in general, do some lateral raises and front raises with a little pause in there. These are the same things that build muscle, the same things that keep my joints happy, And I'm not complaining about having abs or having, some cuts to the back or whatever. But a lot of that is just my body adapting to the demands placed upon it. And I do a lot of weighted carries. I lift heavy, I lift functional, and essentially just try to find a symbiotic mix of how to fit all those pieces together. That's what the whole Wild Hunt system is. And that's how me and my athletes continually do, balance stuff like that.
What have you adopted recently that is something that you picked up? In the gym, you said you started doing those jumps, those hops.
Yeah, Maasai hops.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I steal rather. I culturally appropriate things from all the cultures that I study. So the Maasai hops, I'm going to break a lot of people's hearts here, but there's a high likelihood that most people listening to this are doing plyometrics wrong. and with their box jumps and their weighted leaps and stuff like that. That's not a plyometric. Plyometrics is training the rebound effect. It's the elasticity. It's minimal ground contact time. And so there's a tribe in Africa of lion hunters called the Maasai. And they have these, if you think of them like kind of dancing festivals or community athletic events, kind of where they gather together. Andrew, there should be a good one on my page a little ways back, but and these guys get out there and they just start jumping and springing like in rhythm in a big circle, and they're clapping. Everyone's having a good time, and they're jumping so high they're making NBA dunk contest guys look like 5'9" white dentists from Detroit. Like it's almost superhuman, and it's effortless too. And so I'm like, what's going on here? And I really start looking and understanding. But their joint integrity, their fast twitch muscle, like their tendons must be as thick as the actual bones in their body. But look at that. Even the women, too. Like, they'll hop over all of our heads. And these are also people that hunt lions with spears. And so what
an awesome capacity to have. Like, that's...
Well, so...
I'd imagine if that feels good to jump like that it probably walking and hiking and doing other things probably don't feel bad.
That was funny. I had to put that clip in there on that one. That was so funny. But it is, too, but it's also injury proofing.
Yeah.
So it's like I rolled my ankle 4 or 5 different times, ankles at different points during my run, a couple of them badly. And it's like they hurt and they swole, but they stayed together. And they stayed working, they stayed bearing my weight. And it's because I do stuff like that. And then Nsima and I were messing around a while ago with something called a shiko, which is an ancient Japanese sumo movement. It's literally like a one-leg squat leg lift, and it's like you add a pause in at the top for up to 10 seconds, and it's one of the best like hip mobility and glute medius activators you're going to come across, So I like at all these things. The Eskimos also had some cool stuff. They did a lot of like different jumping stuff, like off the knees and triple jumping and hurdling, like very plyometric stuff, as well as like some cool bodyweight stuff. They have a game called like the one leg kick, where it's like you post on one hand and push all your weight up with your feet and kick a ball hanging from the ceiling. And it's super cool. So it's like I look at all this stuff, but like this functional training, it's all around us, and it's been around for forever. And it's cool to see it coming back, not just like, all around. I mean, in fact, I have there's gym. So I have a coaching program where I coach some athletes, but a lot of other coaches that have their own gyms or online training businesses or whatever. And we've been getting a lot of them into using these techniques and bringing them back, and making them culturally relevant again, as well as relevant in terms of their fitness inputs. And so it's been really cool to kind of watch some of these things, like the one arm, the single arm barbell press, or the shiko, or the Maasai hop, or any of these other things that I've kind of adopted or studied and from earlier cultures, making comebacks. And so I geek out on all that stuff.
What you got going on over there, Andrew?
In Texas, me and Nsima were talking about how it seems like the jiu-jitsu world is a couple years behind when it comes to the lifting and fitness side of things.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
and I mean more than a couple years. Nsima, if you want to talk about that, but is there anything in our history that shows that grapplers or whatever the term may be, that they incorporated a specific training regimen, it was a part of their daily again routines and stuff?
The grapplers of ancient India, we get a lot of, including the weighted club training that's so popular right now, the Gada they called it back then. They used that. They were also big on high volume calisthenics, like inmates, or like I like to use. They had all sorts of cool stuff. They would do a lot of what we would consider GPP, rope climbing, swimming, carrying, dragging. And then they also had something, I believe it was called the Malhambra, something like that. But it was essentially like a giant steel pole, and they would just climb it like cracked out strippers, but just in crazy, difficult ways, upside down, sideways, one limb, and it was just but just perfect. Not that I've never seen that, so I wouldn't know, but you know what I'm saying?
That's how you'd imagine, maybe.
Yeah.
If you had a terrible, dirty mind.
Yeah. But I would say in terms of grappling specific strength training, it's really hard to poke holes in what they were doing even today, And they would do some stone lifting, heavier stuff, but most of their strength training was calisthenic or function, body weight or functional training with bases. And they were big on bags, like Bulgarian bags. They had their own version of that.
It's the resistance of another person too. Like
Yeah.
I know like wrestlers commonly just have someone hop on their back and they run.
Gladiators
run up
too.
a hill.
I actually was able to get my hands on a real gladiator training manual, which is super rare, but and it was written by an imperial physician and gladiator trainer from ancient Rome. And he's actually commonly known as Galen. He's mostly known for his medical research and contributions to the medical community. But he was also, before that, a gladiator trainer, and he developed his own treatise on how to train gladiators. And finding this thing was one of the coolest, most validating things for me, because it was basically just like a wild hunt playbook. Okay? It was basically literally train everything, pick up everything, like the deadlift, the weighted carry, partner carries, grappling maneuvers, like all sorts of digging, like a lot of the things we were talking about.
Yeah.
He had them all in there, and he broke up his exercises up into different categories. Steady, rapid, violent, essentially like by explosive output. And then he would prescribe these things like, do this one steady, do this one violent, it's just fully explosive, do this one,
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's energy systems training. That's, we call it what we call it now. Like that's that. I mean, it's funny, but the program that I use to train for my 500 mile that I'm now, releasing and talking about on my social media all the time right now, like it's, for all the science and research that went into that, it's basically the same. The principles behind it are no different than the gladiator training manual that, Galen put out. It's like train all these different things, train them functional at different intensities and levels. And so that, stuff like that's super cool. But then you also find some weird stuff. Like he had this weird belief that beans were the best carb source for gladiators because they built like flabbier flesh, which would give them like more resilience to sword. Like there's some weird shit in there for sure. He's like, pork is the best protein and beans are the best carb source for gladiators. It's like, okay, but yeah.
Maybe he thought you need to be a little chubby.
Yeah, apparently. But but gladiators weren't vegetarian. I'm sorry to break your heart. What was that? Game Changers.
Game Changers.
Yeah, that was based off a single study of a gladiator cemetery in Ephesus, Turkey. And it's like gladiators, they lived from Britain to Africa to Germania to, the Middle East. Like they ate what was available. They ate what they were given by the ludus, you know what I mean? And that's going to vary from place to place. Simple as that,
Were there any like specific diets like back, again, ancient times, whatever you want to call it, in our history where somebody was specifically like, I guess, like whether it be a gladiator, a warrior, whatever, and they like believed like, oh no, we got to give them the cleanest food, so we'll give them vegetables and shit that grows from the ground, or did nobody do that?
No, it's super rare. I know of a tribe that the Spaniards found in South America or Central America that were vegetarian, and they seemed to be in good health and have a long lifespan, but they were also like, they weren't very, very physical tribe. And also these are Spanish accounts that could have been misinterpreted. It could have been that they ate fish during the seasonal run in the spring, but the Spaniards were there in fall and they were only eating, it could have been something like that. But allegedly. And then of course there were specific individuals like in ancient Greece, they were prone to the same trends we were. Like Greece got hit hard by the carnivore trend, and then they got hit hard by the vegan trend also. And basically what it came down to is what the guy who won the last Olympics was eating. And the one year they even had one champion who swore the secret to his success was just massive quantities of honey.
They got hit by influencers too.
Yeah,
literally. Look, Paul Saladino.
Yeah, there you go.
Pretty much.
There you go. Yeah, but so it's like the same things apply. But it's it is interesting because like I said before, the human mind doesn't really change that much. Like it's like you take away the Wi-Fi and the Instagram, and we're still pretty much dealing with a lot of the same shit. Mm-hmm. And everyone's dogmatic about their way being the best way.
Yeah. You there's a video that you had where you were talking about calisthenics, and then we kind of glazed over the prisoners thing. But what ends up being so beneficial about calisthenics and aging? Then prisoners.
Yeah. So initially I started
64 years.
That guy's a beast. There's also a buddy of mine. His handle is Central Park Joe. And he's a really good dude. He's 60 in his 60s, and he just does like bar workouts in Central Park. And the guy's completely natural. Everything you look at him, it's amazing. But thing is, I got started with calisthenics when I was locked up, and I started doing them every morning first thing because I got pretty quickly to a point where I was doing such high volume that I needed about 3 workouts. Like if I'm going to do 1,000 push-ups in a day, like, with supporting stuff and some burpees and, like bag curls and stuff, probably going to need to break that up. It's also the fact that I wasn't getting much food, so I wanted to work out before each meal.
Yeah.
And so it's like I could finish my workout in time, which when you're eating 4 a.m. breakfast to chow, that means getting up at 3 and getting to it, And so I got in that habit when I was locked up. And then after that, I would kind of use that post-workout high, calm, whatever, to chill and just kind of read. And I'd read about some of the history, and I'd learned to meditate. I kind of taught myself from books to meditate a little bit. So as far as like a morning routine goes, I found that that's just really beneficial in general, but specific to the calisthenics, even science doesn't fully understand it, but it just seems to keep people young in a way that other training doesn't. And it's not like you don't have to be a bar specialist or anything. Like I myself do about 5 minutes a day, and like I'm to the point now where I'm doing like single leg squats and single leg push-ups, stuff like that. But you progress less with anything over time. But it's, I think your body's meant to move under its own weight. So there is that to consider. Like there's not additional load. On top of that, just the sheer number of reps you're going to get coming in and out of any range of motion, and assuming you're doing even a relatively balanced calisthenic program, like you're going to be doing a lot of pushing, pulling, squatting, and hinging. Those tissues are going to be moving, engaging, limbering, hydrating, and if you're not doing that, even if you're like a relatively balanced weightlifter, you're still going to be a lot of ranges of motion, little muscles and areas and ranges of joints that you're not accessing day to day, And that's the shit that keeps you not just young, but keeps the quality of life high. So you're not, squinting every time you bend over at age 34 and, degrading from there.
You're releasing a documentary?
Yeah, so Thug Life, the documentary, it comes out tomorrow. So was that Thursday? And it literally, this just covers the 500-mile run. Like it shows the why, the prep for it, and then right now it's a 3-part series, and the final series that's coming out tomorrow, what covers the actual run itself.
Comes out August 24th.
August 24th, correct. Covers the actual run itself, so the things we talked about, plus go into a little more detail and kind of show you, like I filmed a lot of it, as much as I could. And so you can kind of follow along for all of that. And it was just a really cool experience overall. And I'm super grateful that I was able to do it and that so many people were, supportive. So thanks.
Did it help? Did it help in the way that you thought it would? Because the original reason for running was kind of for your dad, or to help put some of that to rest.
It did, actually. And it also kind of gave me more than I kind of bargained for as well, because I go into it in the doc, but basically it helped me put a healthier perspective and understanding on his death, because he, in addition to dying unexpectedly, it was also suicide. He had fallen off a cliff. He was, like I said, he was a mountain man and bear hunter, so he spent a lot of time in the hills, and he fell off a cliff and just like broke his whole body basically. And eventually they got a helicopter to him, pulled him out, and then they took him back to the hospital, and it was like the next day or something, he checked himself out, and he was at home, and when it became apparent that he wasn't going to be able to run around the mountains and do the things that, he'd done his whole life, he shot himself. So that kind of took, that adds an extra layer of processing and understanding, and basically it just, gave me the objectivity to look at it and just kind of decide that every man has the right to, decide his own fate. And I can't promise that I'd do anything different. And just to be grateful for the time we had. And then beyond that, I got there pretty quick. It was, 4 or 5 days, and I had kind of worked through that and started feeling more at peace with it. And then after that, it was just like that kind of effect rippled outward to the other areas of my life. And I just kind of started looking at society and my history with it, my place in it. And
were you maybe mad at your dad?
No, for some reason I wasn't. Like a lot of people assumed I would be, but I really wasn't. I missed him, and I was sad, and I wished that we had more time together. But I came pretty quickly to a place where I was just grateful for the time we had, because we we did have, we had a complicated relationship, but in the end we had some great years together. I hunted bear with him just last year, and we would have hunted bear in Oregon together this year, and that was one reason I chose there too, was because it was kind of my way of showing him. I never really got to hunt out there. He hunted California and Idaho, and so it was my way to show him, kind of show him that country too. But and then from there, like I said, when you remove yourself from like the noise and just the society in general for that long, you get a different look at it, and you get to kind of examine things. You don't have the noise in your ears. You don't have the dopamine hit every time you pick up your phone to check your social media, your texts, or, see how many likes or whatever this got. And, there's no Kardashians, there's no politics, there's no bad memes or, comment haters, whatever the thing that defines your day is. And it's a little unsettling because it's only you. Like, you're there and it's just you. And you're like, okay, so who am I? Where do I end and where do all those things start? What's really me and what's just the noise passing through? And so I came to enjoy that, and also just kind of realize that, like, maybe don't take shit so seriously. Like, you can do serious shit and not take it, not be super emotionally involved in everything and aggro and emo about it when it doesn't go your way or this or that. And that's something I've learned in general from running, but also just looking at it from the outside. I'm like, man, life is short. It's going to be over before you think about it. Like, before you realize, before you're willing to accept, it's going to be over. And so maybe let's just have some fun, like doing hard shit and like exploring different parts of ourselves and doing different things and trying to enjoy it as much as we can along the way, and not get sucked into the idea that joy lies necessarily in comfort by association, because I felt more joy running 500 miles through the wilderness alone than I ever have sitting on a couch or in a 5-star hotel, or even like, I fucking love steak, but no steak compares to what I felt on that run any one day, and to the point that as busted up as my body is, I'm going back out for another 100 miles, on the PCT next in 5 days. And
for what,
bro? My whole thing was like, I wasn't trying to heal from the last one to just be better. I was trying to heal from the last one to get back out there. Yeah. And so it was like the second. Don't get me wrong. Like, by the time I ended, when I crossed the bridge of the gods at the Washington border, I was like, okay, so never gonna run again. Like, fuck this. I don't even like running. And then. Like, I got a shower, I got a couple meals, and it was maybe 48 hours later, and I was like, we got to get back. We got to get this body ready. I got to get one more in before the season ends. So next week, I will be on the Oregon PCT for 100 miles. I think I can get about 2 days out there.
Dude, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like such a bitch. Like, I've never actually done anything hard now after hearing everything. But with that in mind, like, for people that are listening, like, where do you think, like, for somebody to become a little bit more badass, like, where can people start? Like, because you were saying, like your first couple marathons, you were like, I wasn't even prepared for that, let alone this fucking amazing feat. But, like, yeah, what can somebody do if they're feeling like, whoa, dude, I'm kind of a piece of shit. I've been going the comfort route more than anything. I want to get be a little bit more hardcore than I am.
So do something that you suck at and just jump into it. Like, I try to always like rotate new things in, so I can be a white belt in something always, and always be somewhat outside of my comfort zone. And I mean, yeah, and like the things I'm proficient in, like running, I push the envelope. But like, if you're really, really feeling like that, like unfulfilled, like you need to activate and really get after some stuff, find something that you're gonna love, something you're gonna enjoy. Swim to Alcatraz, or do something small. I don't even care. Like, it could be to swim a mile, run a mile, walk a mile, whatever. But pick something that actually calls to you, not something that the internet told you is badass, or that you should be doing a Murph, or doing what I'm doing, or doing whatever. Like, everyone is different. So it could be a chess tournament, but it's something outside your comfort zone, because you're not going to grow where you are. Like, if you sit in your same routine day after day, the one thing I can promise you is you will die in that routine day after day, unless something else rips you from it. So if you want to change, if you want to push yourself, like, the growth happens outside that comfort zone. And you don't have to like jump violently outside it. You can take 3 steps outside it, but just start something and make sure it's something that actually speaks to you, something that actually calls to you, because you won't stick with it otherwise.
Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, which I know you did because you got this far, then click this one right here because you'll enjoy this one just as much. And if you're choosing to still listen to me currently as I'm telling you to go over here and watch this video, well, hey, that just means you like the sound of my voice. And, well, I'll just keep seducing you right here.